If you've been scrolling through endless listings of manual ironworkers, watching video after video trying to figure out which one actually makes sense for your little shop, you're not alone. I've spent the last few weeks digging into specs, swapping notes with a few shop owners, and even watching the machines in action to see how they really behave when the metal starts moving. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. What I'm about to lay out is the kind of practical, day-to-day perspective that will help you decide whether the Baileigh SW22M is the right tool for the job or just another piece of metal that sits idle in the corner. First off, let's talk about the basic premise of any manual ironworker. You're basically looking for a compact, sturdy frame that lets you shear, notch and punch steel without having to shell out for a full-size hydraulic press. The Baileigh model tries to hit that sweet spot with a fully welded plate steel construction, a material backstop for repeatable cuts, and a gear-driven handle that claims to transfer your arm power efficiently to the blades. On paper, that sounds like a solid foundation for a small fabrication shop or a serious hobbyist who needs to produce a few parts a week. The real question is how that translates when you're actually feeding a 5/8" square tube or a 4-inch flat bar through the machine. One of the biggest practical strengths here is the variety of cutting options you get right out of the box. The SW22M comes with shears sized for 5/8" solid square and round stock, a 4-inch by 3/8" flat bar cutter, and an angle iron shear. For someone who works mostly with standard tubing and angles, that means you can handle most of the common profiles without swapping out blades or buying add-on kits. In a real workshop scenario, I've seen a small shop owner load up a handful of 2x2 angle pieces, a couple of 3/8" round bars, and a few 5/8" squares, then run a quick series of cuts to produce brackets for a custom rack. The fact that the backstop is solid steel lets the operator line up repeat cuts with confidence, which is a small but meaningful time saver when you're churning out a batch of identical parts. Now, the gear-driven handle is where the manual part really shows its character. The idea is that you use your own strength to drive the blades, and the gearing multiplies that effort. In practice, you'll find that cutting a 5/8" solid square does require a decent amount of elbow grease, especially if the metal has any residual stress, or is a higher-grade alloy. For a fit-out where you only need to make a handful of cuts a day, the effort is manageable and some shop owners actually appreciate the tactile feel of a manual machine. However, if you're planning to run a high-volume production line, the repetitive strain can become a real issue. I've spoken with a few users who said after an hour of continuous shearing, the handle starts to feel wobbly as fatigue sets in, which can affect the consistency of the cut, and more importantly, the safety of the operation. Speaking of safety, the fully welded construction does a good job of preventing flex under load, which means the blade stays aligned and the cut stays true. The downside, though, is that the whole rig is fairly heavy. It's compact compared to a full-size hydraulic press, but you still need a solid, level floor and enough clearance around the machine to maneuver stock. In a cramped garage, fitting the SW22M can be a tight squeeze, especially if you need to store raw material nearby. The footprint might be fine for a small dedicated space, but it's not the kind of thing you'd want to pull out of a closet for occasional use. Another practical point to consider is maintenance. Since the machine relies on a gear system and a mechanical handle, you'll have to keep the gears lubricated and occasionally check the alignment of the blades. Baileigh offers a 1-year parts warranty and promises lifetime technical support over the phone, which is a nice safety net if you run into a problem. The reality, however, is that the warranty only covers parts, not any wear that comes from normal operation. If you're a DIYer who doesn't have the habit of regularly greasing gears, you might find yourself reaching for the phone more often than you'd like. So, who should actually buy the Baileigh SW22M? In my view, it's a solid fit for anyone running a small-scale shop. Think custom furniture builders, prototype fabricators, or hobbyist metalworkers who need to cut a range of standard stock on a regular basis. If you already own a bench-type shear or a small hydraulic press, this manual Ironworker can serve as a handy backup or a dedicated cutting station that doesn't require power hookups. The value really comes from the versatility of having multiple cutting sizes in one compact unit, and the peace of mind that comes with a welded frame that won't warp after a few cuts.